Back in 2009, Stirling Albion was a club on the brink. Mounting debts, coupled with a difficult financial climate, meant that with the club's main shareholder relinquishing control, the future looked bleak. All that changed when, in May of that year, the club's fans launched the Buy Stirling Albion campaign. A year down the line, and with a huge amount of campaigning, which was picked up by the national press, the Supporters Trust officially took control of the club, becoming the first team in Britain to be fully controlled by the supporters. They appointed several members to the club's executive board and tasked them with the running of the club. The man currently at the helm as chairman is lifelong fan Stuart Brown. After initially taking the role on for 3 weeks after the departure of two board members less than a year after the club changed hands, Brown has been in charge ever since, and he describes being asked to take the job as a great honour.
I came onto the board in year one. At the end of year one, two of the directors left the club pretty much at a moment's notice. I volunteered. My wife would probably tell me it was the worst decision I ever made, to help out for 3 weeks until we could see where we're going, and I've pretty much been in that hot seat of operational director since, and in recognition of the work that I've done over the period, about 18 months ago I think it is now, I was appointed chairman, which was a great honour. I can't think of anything that that would be a greater honour in terms of a club that I've supported since I was 6 years of age.
The campaign to buy Stirling Albion required fans to give up their time and effort, with many doing so more than willingly as they attempted to safeguard their club's future. One of the most prominent campaigners was lifelong fan Matthew Hollingworth. As a teenager, he gave up countless hours for the sake of the campaign, and he has remained involved with the club ever since. As well as volunteering as the club's tannoy announcer on match days, he is also the vice chairman of the Stirling Albion Supporters Trust at the age of just 22. He explained what the role involves and how he came to hold such an important position at such a young age.
Started coming to games at about 4 years old with my father, who had moved up from Liverpool, and obviously there was the links between Anfield and the two Shankly brothers. From there became a ball boy really young on, and kind of devoted myself a bit to the club. Made quite a few connections, and from there when the announcement came that there was going to be a campaign, I was one of the first to volunteer. The majority of it was leaflets, running stalls, managing events, doing fundraisers, stuff like that, and it's just developed from there.
On the pitch, things have not been so rosy for the Beanos since the fans took control. Having just been promoted to the First Division at the time of the takeover, successive relegations followed, and despite making a brief return to the second tier last season, they once again find themselves battling in the basement division. The man tasked with turning the club's fortunes around on the field is none other than former player Stuart McLaren, who featured for the club in the 1990s. He explained what it's like to manage a club like Stirling Albion.
It's a real thrill for a start. Playing football was all I ever wanted to do as a boy, and unfortunately when the body says to me that was no longer an option as a career, naturally took to coaching, and I'm delighted with the path that my career's had, but to have the opportunity to manage a professional football club, but then in turn one that's owned by the fans is, as I say, it's a big thrill. They are your customers, they are your people that you answer to, they are the reason why you do the things that you try and do, because you want to make their Saturdays and their Tuesday nights enjoyable.
A big part of Stirling Albion's plans for the future revolves around youth development. As well as overseeing the Beanos' first team, Stuart McLaren also puts the club's future stars through their paces with the help of coaches Andy Todd and Ross Forsyth. The trio's coaching is clearly paying off, with the Bambinos, as they have been christened by some fans, challenging at the top of the SPFL Development League table, while several youth players have already made their first team debuts. McLaren is a firm believer in the value of youth development and says it is a vital part of the club's make-up.
When I came to the club, one of the areas that we spoke about was recruitment, and that's always key to any football club and its successes. And you look at your available streams of recruitment, and the first one I think you've always got to pay heed to is what's happening within your own youth ranks.
Meanwhile, Todd and Forsyth are of the opinion that although fan ownership has had an impact on the amount of players coming through the club's youth team, the crucial factor is the belief the manager has in the system.
I think the first team manager in any club at this level has such a big influence on how things are structured at the club, what his sort of philosophy is, his mindset and his objectives. And the manager from the start has been very clear that he wants to see youth progressing. He set out his sort of plan with the structure of the 20s, that close relationship with them and the first team. So I think he's been instrumental in bringing that together. That's not to say anything against how things were previously run, but I do think at this level that having a close 20s and a close first team is absolutely crucial. And I think it probably would act as a bit of a blueprint for other clubs at this level.
And obviously with the fan ownership and a lot of the whole board being Stirling Albion fans, they always like to see young boys coming through, just like any supporter at any club. You like to see your young talent coming through your system and making good headway and getting into the first team. But it is down to the manager and how he wants to run it. If I had a manager that was in that maybe wasn't interested in the 20s, which is the case at some clubs, then the focus wouldn't be there and the relationship wouldn't be there for the 20s to progress. So as much as it probably is a little bit down to fan ownership coming in and the board being fans, and that probably influences their decision on what type of manager they want to come in.
At a comparatively small club such as Stirling Albion, it is all hands on deck, with many of the club's staff doing more than one job. Ross Forsyth, as well as being another of the club's under-20 coaches, is also one of the longest serving players currently on the Albion books. The defender is in his second spell at Fourth Bank, having made his first debut in 2005, and although he departed for spells with Morton and Dumbarton, he returned for a second spell in 2013 and is held in high regard by the Beano's faithful.
I think they have put a bit more of a personal touch on things. I give you an example. I now know everyone who's on the board. They all talk to the players. They're very involved with what's going on. They take an interest personally in the players, and they really want the best for the club. They put in a lot of hard work, endeavour. I'm not volunteering in order to do so. So there's a lot of personal interest in the club. It's not to say that there wasn't that before, but it kind of feels a bit more, how can I say, a bit more of a family orientated personal side to things now with the club. Everyone who's on that board more or less is a Stirling fan. They have Stirling interests at heart, and that sort of naturally bridges the gap between players, the board and the fans, because they are, one minute they could be making financial decisions about the club, next on a Saturday they're out there cheering the boys on and really want them to do well. So yeah, it does link things together.
Now that the club is on a much more stable footing, there are definite signs that the green shoots of progress are beginning to push through, and those involved are hopeful that they can now begin to make steady progress back towards where they feel they should be.
To 5 or 10 years' time, winning the Champions League, no. To be honest, you'd want to be, Championship? Maybe bottom end of the Championship? I'd be happy with that. Even top of League One, that sort of area. I think that's sustainable. Personally, I'd love to say Premier League, but I don't think it's quite enough of an infrastructure for that.
With results improving on and off the pitch for Stirling Albion, the future is taking on a much more positive look for the club and its fans. It remains to be seen whether the Beanos can achieve their ultimate goals, but with other clubs, including big names such as Hearts and Motherwell, now following in their footsteps in becoming owned by the supporters, it seems that this club from the heart of Scotland has set a trend that others are keen to follow.